Borthakur IAS Academy প্রস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, this is Funny Dheeraj. Welcome to Borthakur IAS Academy. This is our daily Hindu analysis class for 28th August 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. So today's first article is Indian astrophysicists spot rare merger of 3 jumbo black holes. To begin with, let us understand what black holes are. Right, a black hole is formed when a star dies. So what happens is when a star, like the star sun, right, when they reach that critical point or end of their lifespan, they collapse on themselves in such a way that the matter that is in them gets squeezed into a very small space, right? Because as the star is dying, it collapses on itself, and as a result of it, the matter gets squeezed, meaning it gets compressed to such a tiny space that it also ends up trapping the light itself. That is why we cannot see black holes. The matter is compressed or squeezed to such an extent and such a tiny space that even light cannot escape it. The basic understanding is that the black holes are invisible. The black holes aren't invisible. We cannot see them, in the sense that nothing escapes their field. Luckily, because of scientific exploration, we have seen, or we have been able to see pictures of black hole like the one we are seeing on the screen right now. But that is not the black hole. That is the matter or the light or the gases that are circling around black hole even before these gases collapse into the black hole itself. It is the ring of matter, the debris, or whatever it is, the gases that surround the black hole that are emitting the light, and not the black hole itself. So researchers have been detecting black holes for a long period of time. That's the theory of it. And we were able to successfully photograph using long distance telescopes, various wavelengths of radio waves, x-rays, or whatever it is, and we were able to spot and study black holes for a long period of time. These are black holes. Now the second concept that we need to explore. So now let us understand what merger of galaxies or merger of black holes is. Because of the way that the universe or the cosmos moves, there is a lot of interaction that happens between galaxies. And when galaxies collide, generally it also means that the black holes that are generally at the center of those galaxies also collide or they merge. Because of their huge power or their energies, they don't just collide as two objects. There are a lot of intricacies that are involved when black holes merge with one another. So what generally ends up happening is when two galaxies collide, naturally their black holes also come closer to each other. During that process, they tend to do that by transferring the kinetic energy, that is energy that they possess, to the surrounding gases. And what happens is, over a period of time, the distance between the two black holes decrease, and they reach a point where the separation, since we measure the distances in time, the separation around them becomes just 1 parsec, that is 3.26 light years. So then things tend to stall, because they no longer have the kinetic energy that they can pass on to other gases or pass on to the surrounding matter or gas and come further closer. Now that is identified as the parsec problem, right, at the final parsec. Now what tends to happen in that scenario is things become status quo, right? The two black holes come closer and closer, right? Then, because they don't have the kinetic energy anymore to pass on to other surrounding gases, they are unable to lose further kinetic energy to close the gap between those two, and they cannot even get closer enough to complete the merger. Now this problem is known as the final parsec problem. So till now we have been observing merger of two black holes, right? That is how we found out gravitational waves exist in the universe through the LIGO detector, right? Scientists using the LIGO detector were able to detect gravitational waves when two supermassive black holes merged in a far distant away galaxy. So the phenomenon of two massive black holes or supermassive black holes merging is a known phenomenon, but it is a rare phenomenon even at that. But what scientists at Indian Institute of Astrophysics were able to discover or spot was a rare event taking place where they observed three supermassive black holes merging together, right? This is significant because remember I told you about the final parsec problem. They arrive at a point of time in the merger that they become so close, but they cannot close the gap to complete the merger because they don't have the kinetic energy. Now the team that has been observing this phenomena, earlier they thought that there were only two black holes, but they started seeing some unknown readings that led to believe that there existed a third black hole near to these two that were merging already. Now their idea is that because of the presence of the third black hole in the equation, these two black holes which were already on the path of merger can complete the merger because the third can provide the necessary kinetic energy or can take away the necessary kinetic energy from the equation, because when it is passing nearby them, it also attracts the rest of the kinetic energy either of these two black holes possess by ensuring the gap further closes, completing the merger. If you look at the picture, you can clearly see the presence of a third black hole near to NGC 7733. Now this is significant because, as I said, this is a rare phenomenon. So all these three merging black holes are part of different galaxies in the Tucan constellation. Again, this is very far away, but when you talk about in time in space or distance in space, almost everything is relative. So simply the dual merging black holes can transfer their energy to the third black hole and complete the merger with each other, finally overcoming the final parsec problem. Now this allows the complete merger, which couldn't have been possible earlier because they couldn't just shed enough kinetic energy to the surrounding gas, ensuring a complete merger. Now if you look at the infrared image, again you see the dark spots in the middle. That is where the black holes are. The colored parts, the green, yellows, the reds, the violets, are the surrounding gases to which the black holes pass on the kinetic energy that they themselves possess. So the researchers from this project were able to complete their observations through a telescope in South Africa. Later on, when they found out the interesting third black hole being present, they used an Indian launched space observation instrument or satellite called AstroSat to complete their observations, right? AstroSat is India's first dedicated multi-wavelength space telescope, right? This is a proud moment for us in the sense that it is a prelims point of view question, in the sense that it was the first dedicated space telescope that we launched, which was multi-wavelength. We launched one in 1996. Again, that was a space telescope which was successful, but later on it took us more than a decade for us to launch a second space telescope, dedicated telescope for observations, which was launched in 2015 September. Now the speciality of AstroSat is it can perform multi-wavelength observations that cover a wide spectrum of wavelengths, right? Or spectral bandwidths. It can cover radio, optical, infrared, ultraviolet and X-ray wavelengths. 5 instruments make up the AstroSat multi-wavelength space observatory satellite. or telescope, not satellite, telescope. I have to correct myself here. The first is the Large Area X-ray Proportional Counter, LAX-PC. The second is Soft X-ray Telescope, SXT. The third is the Cadmium Zinc Telluride Imager, CZTI. The fourth is Scanning Sky Monitor, SSM. The fifth, Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope. This is the part of the space telescope that helped these group of researchers to complete their observations. After the initial observations through a telescope in South Africa, they used this instrument on our Space Observatory telescope to complete their observations. Again, Indian researchers were able to detect a rare phenomenon happening in our neighboring galaxies, where they observed the rare phenomena of merger of three supermassive black holes, and this has been done by a team of astrophysicists from Indian Institute of Astrophysics using an instrument on board an Indian launched multi-wavelength space observatory called AstroSat. They are raising money through one initiative to fund another entirely different initiative, where on one hand they are using underutilized already constructed or already completed infrastructure to fund and build new infrastructure to meet future demands. This project is being envisaged by Niti Aayog, right? It is the steering authority for national monetization pipeline, and this was announced by our finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Now, before this national monetization pipeline comes into foray or comes into effect, there are certain regulatory roadblocks that are currently hindering the process to be a seamless or a smooth process. In order to address those roadblocks, in order to address those regulatory framework issues, the government is trying to address those issues by amending certain things. Right? These are not laws, these are policy stances that various organizations that will play a part in the National Asset Monetization Plan need to do. Now, there has to be a coordination or inter-regulator coordination that has to take place, right? You have RBI, you have SEBI, you have IRDA. These are all different organizations that operate on their individual silos. But when you talk about something like a national asset monetization pipeline or national infrastructure pipeline, you need interaction and coordination between all of these regulatory authorities. So the roadblock, as I said or I talked about, are nothing but there needs to be a regulatory coordination between different organizations in our country. Now, as a way to achieve that, Finance Minister will chair a meeting of the Financial Stability and Development Council, where all these regulatory authorities are a part of, and they'll try to ensure that the coordination between all these organizations happens and they all together relax the norms enough so that the process is smooth and the process is seamless. Now they are trying to make an environment where the infrastructure investment trust can operate. Right? The national asset monetization involves using instruments such as infrastructure investment trusts to monetize underutilized public assets. We talked about stadiums, we talked about railway stations, we talked about airports, we talked about power grids. There are multiple other sectors that have been brought under the National Asset Monetization Plan. The National Asset Monetization will use systems such as Infrastructure Investment Trust. National Asset Monetization talks about monetizing underutilized projects in our country, where they want both public and private partnership to invest into underutilized projects in the country, so that the government of India can raise sufficient funds to reinvest into other infrastructure projects. Now the problem is there currently lacks a streamlined process or norms across various regulatory authorities. Right? There are certain investment norms that go against the National Asset Monetization Plan. In order to remove those, or in order to relax those investment norms, you need regulatory coordination, inter-regulator coordination between RBI, SEBI, IRDA and other such organizations. So that is what they are trying to address. Moving on to the next article, Deepar Beel breathes easy after eco-sensitive zone notification. Now earlier we discussed what is the issue with the Deepar Beel eco-sensitive zone or wildlife sanctuary. The problem is that a railway tracks cuts through the Deepar Beel wildlife sanctuary. On the one side you have the water component of it, on the other side you have the wildlife sanctuary. See, this is where the problem lies. From what I understand, the issue rises when wildlife travels from the other side of the track to access the water, and particularly you notice elephants or herds of elephants crossing the track to feed on the aquatic plants. Now Deepar Beel is one of the largest freshwater lakes in Assam, and not only that, it is the only Ramsar site in the state, right? It is also host to birds. There are some endemic birds that are local to Assam that make a Deepar Beel their home. The problem is, because of the railway track, it has put a lot of strain on the ecosystem there. Not only that, people have lost lives because of the track. Not only people, a large number of wildlife has also succumbed to train accidents because of the presence of this track. Now finally, the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has finally notified the eco-sensitive zone of Deepar Beel Wildlife Sanctuary. Now this notification means that these wetlands, which are already under stress, will get the breather that they need, right? As a result of it, some activists are saying that the water has already become toxic, and many of the natural aquatic plants that elephants feed on have already been destroyed. So what are eco-sensitive zones? Eco-sensitive zones are that fragile area that surrounds or exists within 10 kilometers of protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries or protected areas. And the idea of designating or notifying a 10 kilometer area surrounding the national parks or wildlife as eco-sensitive zones is to create a buffer between these protected areas and human populace to reduce human and animal conflict. But in this case, because of this notification, the 10 kilometer area surrounding this now becomes an eco-sensitive zone, and they come under ambit of the government protection. So when a zone is being declared or identified as an eco-sensitive zone, it prevents a lot of human activities to be carried out in that zones or in those zones. One is the commercial mining, crushing units. You cannot set up industries that result in pollution. You cannot establish projects. You cannot use the firewood that is available for commercial purposes. You cannot dispose your solid waste water there, or you cannot use that area as wastewater disposal places. And there are many other activities that are prohibited or completely banned when a zone is being declared as an ESZ. Now hopefully, because of this announcement and this notification, we can hope that whatever the damage has been done can recover over a period of time through various conservation methods and activities. And again, this is a welcome sign in a bid to develop to defend and protect our ecosystem and our environment. Now moving on to the next article, that is again related to environment and ecosystem. India added 557 new species to faunal wealth in 2020, says ZSI. So ZSI is Geological Survey of India. And to its credit, India has added 557 new species to its fauna list. Now this 557 includes 407 new species and 150 new records. Now this was published by Geological Survey of India, and with this addition, the total number of faunal species that exists in India has climbed to 1,02,718 species. So with this announcement, the total number of species that are in India have climbed to 1,02,718 species. Mind you, these are all new species. The few interesting out of the list that was added is snakes or vipers, right? For prelims point of view, I don't think the scientific name is needed. I don't want you to waste time by remembering all the scientific names. But what you have to remember is, in 2020 they discovered a new species of viper called the green pit viper, right? This was discovered in Arunachal Pradesh. The second that they discovered was in Karnataka, which was the Deccan wolf snake. Not only they were able to discover vipers, snakes, but they also discovered a new species of frog, which was named Bengaluru, because they named it after Bengaluru because they discovered it in Karnataka. And this also includes a deep water species of snake eel from Kerala. This is where you have to be very careful. When they say snake eel, it doesn't mean it's a snake. It is a fish. To repeat, when they say that a deep water species of snake eel was discovered in Kerala, it is not a snake. Again, it is identified as a fish. Not only that, they discovered a new species of catfish from Manipur and also a scrap beetle from Greater Nicobar biosphere. So this is in sense, from prelims point of view, you need to remember the green pit viper, which was discovered in Arunachal Pradesh. The scientific names are not that important, but being aware of what kind of species was discovered, the name that they identified it with, and the location is kind of significant for state level or prelims. That is why I wanted this article to be included. Moving on to the next article, Ministries agree to allow 7 Himalayan hydel projects. Now this article is significant in the sense, recently the area where they are saying that we are going to allow construction of new projects is the area where we have been seeing pretty much active geological activity, meaning we are seeing floods, we are seeing landslips, we are seeing landslides, and we are seeing cloudburst kind of events taking place with frequency in this region, in this Himalayan region. These permissions come at a point of time where we are seeing an increased events taking place in that region, and many of the reasons as to why these kinds of natural events are taking place in that particular region of India has been attributed to the disturbances that happen to the environment, the ecology, and the ecosystem when large scale construction takes place. They tend to disrupt the natural flow of events or natural flow of system in that environment. Now, at a time when we are seeing increased calamities taking place because of human activities, the question does rise whether to allow such kinds of large scale construction projects to take place in that eco-sensitive zones or not. What should be the right balance, or what is the right balance? You cannot forego development, or you cannot completely ignore development to protect the environment, or you cannot completely ignore the environment for the sake of development. So that is a unique problem. That is something that has to be found out with larger consultations or wider consultation with local population, with experts. And again, this is kinds of an ethical dilemma that any country or any government faces or any company faces when at the cost of development the environment is being destroyed. As a result of the environment or the ecosystem being disrupted, you are seeing the same construction projects that they are carrying out being also destroyed by the floods or the landslip that that happen as a result of these constructions. So that is an ethical dilemma that one has to consider when construction or large scale construction is considered in these eco-sensitive zones. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা। Borthakur IAS Academy।